Good afternoon, all of you. It's time to start session number 3 today. And I request Dr. Bhagyasri Madam to accept our chairpersonship of this session. And two speakers are in this session. One is Eva De Clark and second is Vidya Vencatesan. So I give introduction. First of all, first speaker, Dr. Vidya Vencatesan. First speaker is Vidya Vencatesan. And her introduction is Professor Vidya Vencatesan, Head of Department of French and Director, Center for European Studies, University of Mumbai and Paris. She did her PhD on a comparative study of the Valmiki Ramayana and the French epic. She is interested to work world epic traditions, folk tales and tales beside Francophone literature and literary translation. She has many national and international publications in French and English to her credit. She is the editor-in-chief of India's only Francophone peer-reviewed indexed research journal, Synergies Ind, sponsored by the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, France. She is the local coordinator for the Erasmus Mundus Master CLE program run by a consortium of 5 European and 3 non-European universities for Asia. Professor Venkatesan has translated Javed Akhtar's poetic oeuvre Tarkas and Love into French. Dhundr Mond, इस नाम से. Raphael Conflicts novel La Pensée du Chacal into English. The Cane Cutter's Song, published by Speaking Tiger in 2021. She holds 3 international awards from France and Italy. Now, I request Professor Vidya Venkatesan to deliver his distinguished speech.
Namaskar. I apologize for this very random arrangement that I have had to make for the presentation. My apologies to Somaiya Vidya Vihar for not displaying their banner behind me. There is a bit of a family medical crisis, so I'm actually reading my paper from a hospital. I am well, but I'm a caregiver, the primary caregiver here. Hence, you will forgive me for this presentation. So I begin. Thank you very much for inviting me, Dharma Studies, Somaiya Vidya Vihar University. To read in the presence of learned scholars like yourself is a great privilege and also a humbling experience, because I recognize how little I know. But all I can say is I bring a lot of interest and commitment to this subject. Ramayana and I go back for a greater part of my life. I'm 55 years old. So I think, if nothing else, at least by a process of osmosis, I must have understood something. And that's something I will try to share with you to the best of my abilities. If there are any mistakes, lacunae in my understanding, I'm happy to be corrected. With your permission, I will start. Respected scholars and learned colleagues, thank you for inviting me and Kamban Talwar, my Tamil poet, to your national and international seminar. As you know, I teach French, and technically I'm quite out of place in this rarefied stratosphere of Indian languages and cultures. But Professor Supriya Rai and Professor Pathak are familiar with my commitment to languages, both international and national. So I hope to make up for my lack of knowledge through a wealth of feeling. The Ramayana means different things to different people. Some people revere it as a sacred text. Others look upon it as a literary gem. And yet others think of it as a historical document. The readings and interpretations of the Ramayana, as you have been discussing over the past few days, are endless. And each of us has a deep and abiding ties with this beautiful story. Today, I will be focusing on the Kamba Ramayana, which is called the Ramavataram. I know it is spelled with an I, so everybody imagines that it is actually Iramavataram. No, it is Ramavataram. But while writing it in the Tamil script, the Ramavataram will be preceded by an E to give it emphasis. And so it is, you will read it in English as IRA, and many people wrongly pronounce it as Iramavataram. It is not Iramavataram, it is Ramavataram. So this is by Kamban. Now, A.K. Ramanujan has told us there are over 300 recorded Ramayanas. We will not even look at the unrecorded. Many of you have made beautiful, moving presentations on the various Ramayana traditions. So compared to what you have said, I do not bring something extraordinarily new to table. But it gives me great pleasure to talk about Kambanatalvar and his Ramavataram. So if we go to Kambanatalvar, let me tell you a little bit about Kambanatalvar, because he's actually known as Kamban quite simply, but because he was a poet of a bhakti poet, the Alvars made him one of them. And to give you a little context for Kamban, let me tell you first that the Ramavataram gets composed. I mean, it was written, but I will use the word composed. It is composed around the 12th century in the heart of the Chola period. Now, what does Kamban and Kamban's readership or audience, we can put it either way, what is their background? We must know that by 12th century, the Tamil culture is an extremely evolved and very, very, with a million facets. They have behind them the Sangam period of poetry, and where concepts like Kudal or union, Udal or a little misunderstanding between the couple, Pirivu, separation, these are all very delineated, studied in detail, analyzed in depth kind of topoi. Similarly, they have between them great poetry. They have behind them great poetry like the Ahananuru, Purananuru, Shilapadiharam. So we are looking at a very, very literate, a very cultured and a very refined people who are not going to just accept a story because Valmiki said it or because it's a sacred text. They expect, and I mean they expect, a lot of complex language, intricately worked out metaphors and similes, and a Tamil twist. So while Kamban can tell the same Ramayana story again and again, here he will have to make this text appealing to a very cultured, refined people who have a great literary tradition behind them, who are presently involved in very, very interesting, innovative cultural endeavors. And this is a Tamil culture at the height of its cultural evolution. So you will find that there is something very different in Kamban's telling of the story. Now, the Rama story that he tells, the Ramavataram, is made up of 12,116 verses. He lived in one of the greatest flowerings of culture, comparable to the Renaissance in Europe or the Golden Age of Greece in Rome. During his lifetime in the 12th century AD, the Cholas had reached a high point, as did the artistry of the temples, the sculpture, and the literature. So influential was the work he wrote, so wide its scope and so perfect its execution, that he came to be called the universal monarch of poets, or Kavi Chakravarti. As George Hart puts it, as Dante summarized medieval Christianity, so Kamban summarized the extraordinarily rich medieval Hinduism, which was flowering in South India. And like Dante, and probably more than any other Indian poet, Kamban's work was characterized by a breadth of sensitivity and understanding that makes him a great intellectual thinker as well as a poet. So now if we come to a brief comparison with Valmiki, we find that where Valmiki was secular, Kamban was religious. Where Valmiki used simple language, Kamban used very complex lingua. While Valmiki uses imagery a little in a cavalier manner, if I may allow to be say so, with all my apologies to the Sanskritist sitting there, Kamban endows his story with dynamic movement and change that are characteristic of the Tamil tradition. He utterly changed the literature of Tamil, which was one of the oldest and richest literatures in the world. No writer could ignore him or escape his influence, and too many attempted to imitate him slavishly. Let me tell you something about Kamban. Kamban was born in Tirida in the Chola country. He belonged to the Uvachan caste. The family tradition was to ring the bell in the Kali temple. And he died in Natarasan Kotai, and his memorial is still worshipped by the common people. Other literary and non-literary works are attributed to him. And whether he really wrote all those pieces or not is a matter of discussion and conjecture, so I will not get into it. Kamban is called Kambanat Alvar. Alvars, as we know, are mystics of the Vaishnava tradition who were steeped in bhakti. They wandered from temple to temple, singing ecstatically the name of Vishnu. They came from different castes and creeds. There are two theories regarding the etymology of the word Alvar. For some, it comes from the Tamil word Aram, which means depth. These devotional poets were immersed deeply in bhakti, hence they were Alvars. According to another set of scholars, it is a contamination of Alvar, which means those who rule, obviously spiritually. There were 12 recognized Alvars, but Kamban was recognized as an Alvar too, because he told the story of Rama, and not because he told Rama's story, not so much as somebody who retold the story of the Ramayana. Hence, he does not call his story simply the Ramayana or Ramayana as we know it. It is actually called, like I told you, Rama Avataram, or the Avatara of Rama. Unlike Valmiki's Rama, Kamban is aware of his own divinity. Right from the beginning, Kamban recognizes Rama as an incarnation of Vishnu, and the very first chapter of the Rama Avataram is called Avatara Padalam, that is the chapter of the incarnation. And when the world is in turmoil because Dharma outweighed Adharma outweighed Dharma, Mahavishnu agrees to come on earth as a human being. The Adisesha, who he sleeps on in the milky ocean of Kshetrasagara, is born as Lakshmana. Mahalakshmi is born as Sita. The Shankh is born as Bharata, and the Sudarshan Chakra as Shatrughna. Indra becomes Bali, Surya becomes Sugriva, and Vayu becomes Hanuman. So right from the beginning, the blueprint is very clear. It is an Avatara Padalam, Rama as God, as an Avatara of Mahavishnu on earth. Now coming to certain episodes and certain characters that I will be dwelling on. This is not an exhaustive list. Like I said, at the time of publication, I promised to do a better job. As of now, I am making do with what I can in my circumstances. So let us begin with the most interesting part of the Ramayana, according to me, which is the Rama-Sita wedding. Now, if you remember in the Valmiki Ramayana, the Rama-Sita wedding is just a Vedic ritual. There is more time spent by Valmiki on describing the actual sacrificial altar. And the couple are just called Sarvalankara Bhushita, that they are adorned with beautiful ornaments and beautifully dressed. There is great emphasis laid on the genealogy, on the Gotra of the two families. And there is not much said about the couple itself. Understandably so, because the Ramayana, as imagined by Valmiki, is a war poem. And much more time will be spent later on describing the Rama-Ravana Yuddha, the various military alliances struck by Rama, and how Rama was a great king. So here we are looking at a romance. It is a romance of a very powerful, between a very powerful prince with a lot of military strength, sure, but the strength of his arms and his abilities of archery do not take away from a warm, loving heart of a young man who sees a beautiful girl at the Kannimadam. We are given to understand that unmarried girls stayed in a separate building, and there was a lovely balcony, and they were playing with a little ball when the ball slipped out of Sita's hand and fell on the road as Rama and Lakshmana, along with Vishwamitra, were walking along. And it is that moment when Rama looks up, sees Sita, Sita looks down, sees Rama. And the poet says that at that moment when their eyes met, they didn't need to speak, because both of them remembered all the previous avatars and all the times that they had united as Mahavishnu and Sri Mahalakshmi, that words were quite irrelevant at this moment. Rama says nothing. He moves on. He moves on, and he's going to be taken to this, and Vishwamitra is going to introduce him to this huge Shivadhanush, which is going to break, and wed Sita. In all of this, Sita's emotions, Sita from the moment she sees Rama becomes a Sangam, lovelorn heroine. She suffers from all the necessary, she goes through the entire protocol of falling in love. She suffers all the pangs of passion, and her friends apply chandan on her body, and it evaporates. Such is the, so much her body burns with the fever of separation. And she immediately prays that this man to whom I have given my heart should be the one who should break the bow, because I'm a chaste young lady and I would not give my heart to a man who I was not going to wed. And so it continues. And when here we meet another very interesting character. Her name is Neela Malai, and she's a little Sakhi. She has been appointed by Sita's Sakhis, and since Sita is not in the room, nor are the Sakhis, this little girl is, sorry, there is a message. Am I supposed to respond to it from the Ramayana conference? May I continue? Have I overstepped my time?
You can continue, ma'am.
I can continue. So you have the character of Neela Malai. She's a little Sakhi. Obviously, the most inexperienced of the lot, must be very young too. And this is a character entirely invented by Kamban. And the girls, the Sakhis, tell here, you go and see what's happening in the main hall. Who broke the bow? What is happening? Has it been broken at all? And so Neela Malai goes there, and she's peering at the scene. And when the bow breaks, she's so excited because the entire hall is clapping, people are overjoyed, that she rushes back to the Kannimadam where Sita is sitting with her Sakhis. But she has forgot, so much is she moved by the emotion that she comes skipping along, she's dancing, she has forgotten the protocol that upon entering a palace room where the princess is seated, she has to bow low, she has to offer obeisance, and she forgets all that. She's laughing, she's dancing, she's singing, and the other Sakhis, who obviously don't know what has happened, tell her, what's wrong with you? Come on, speak. And she comes out of her stupor, as if out of a dream state, and she says, they broke the bow. So you see, this is a very interesting character. I feel she's here to sort of represent the feelings of Sita, her friends, all those who witnessed the breaking of the bow. And she conveys a wealth of emotion, and she disappears from the scene thereafter. Neela Malai never appears. So this is, for me, one of the cameos that Kambana Talwar is going to draw, just to convey the intensity of the emotion, where all rules are broken, where no protocol is respected. Such is the joy bubbling over in the heart of this little child. The other reason that I would like to dwell on the in the Kambana Talwar creation on the Rama-Sita wedding is that clearly dressing up was an art. I mean, today when we refer to fashion, we refer to the fashion industry in Milan, we speak about Paris, but clearly Tamil Nadu had a very, very refined sense of jewelry, makeup and clothes, because there are verses and verses and verses describing the jewelry worn by Rama and by Sita. So men also wore a lot of jewelry. There is a detailed description of the makeup used. And the most, of course, there is the usual lipstick and powder and all the rest of it. But what strikes you is a shimmering powder that was applied to her face, which made her face glow. And they put it on her neck and all over her body. So, you know, today I understand from my students that it's something called body glitter gel that young people use today. Well, Sita used it in the 12th century. And there are detailed descriptions of the kind of jewelry she wears. And, you know, he says her jhumkas, who were sort of, which were dangling, they were dangling as if to say, is this him? Is it not him? Is it him? Is it not him? You know, and similarly, Rama is attired in a string of necklaces. There's gold, there are precious stones. And this, for me, is a case of not just a description, not just a poetic description. It is the entire pleasure that the poet is going to draw out of darshana. You know, he's standing in the presence of his Lord. His Lord has been adorned with the most beauteous garlands, jewelry, and the poet is also the bhakta, who's deeply moved, whose love overflows, and words pour forth from his heart, quite beyond his own control. And then you have the case of women who come to look at Rama, and you know, they are looking at this very handsome prince, and then they turn their eyes at Sita. They don't know who to look at first. And the poet says, I give you a translation. Those who saw Rama's shoulders, Tol Kandar, Tole Kandar, they couldn't remove their eyes from Rama's shoulders. Tal Kandar, those who looked at his feet, Tale Kandar, could not take his eyes away from his feet. So there was nobody who saw Rama in his entire form or Sita in her full beauty, because each part was so beautiful, so mesmerizing. Such was the charisma of every part of the body. So then the wedding happens. The wedding is described in great detail. There are any number of rituals, and we find a lot of commonality with some of the practices we still follow today, all of which is absent from Valmiki, and which Kamban takes great pleasure in describing. Then we come to the next stage in this, which is the Vanavasa. Kaikeyi has asked Rama to leave, and so Rama is going to leave, and with Sita, of course. And we meet the character of Shurpanaka. Now, I don't know how many people are really aware outside the Tamil tradition that the whole episode where Shurpanaka changes her form is actually a Kamban invention. And it is the first Ramayana from after Valmiki. But in Valmiki, there is Shurpanaka doesn't change her form. She appears and talks. She's a Rakshasi. She looks like a Rakshasi, and she does not change her form. Whereas here, Shurpanaka, in my view, is a much more intelligent woman. She knows the strategy to use. She's found this young man or two young men. She doesn't mind settling for either or. She's not a difficult woman. And when she sees herself, she knows that she cannot approach them the way she is. So she transforms herself and she becomes what Kamban calls Kamavalli. She is the very essence of Eros. She is sensual, she's beautiful. And he describes that transformation. And as she approaches, she's not walking like some hugely built Rakshasi without grace, stamping her feet on the ground, not at all. She comes with gentle steps. You can hear the anklets before she comes. But the sting is in the tail. Kamban says that she comes as a beautiful, slim, elegantly attired woman, Nanji yana Vanjam. She was a woman, but she was actually poison. Nanji yana Vanjam ahal vandal. So the poisonous woman came. So this character of Shurpanakha, who thinks that to seduce a man, she can't go the way she is. She needs to transform herself. She transforms herself and then presents herself to Rama. That she doesn't have much success. That part is faithful to Valmiki. But the definition, this particular moment of the transformation of Shurpanakha into Kamavalli is a very unique innovation by Kamban. Then we go on to another very interesting this thing, which is the Vali Sugriva episode. If you remember, Rama hides behind trees to shoot and kill Vali, and Valmiki kind of glosses over it. He doesn't get into the ethical problem of it all, though later on poets have revisited this particular topos. But I found something very interesting in Kamban, in that when after the episode, when Sugriva is now their man, their military ally, Lakshmana is going to have a brief discussion with his brother, saying, don't you think we interfered in something that did not concern us? And while accepting Sugriva as our military ally, don't you think his moral character remains a little dubious because he sought a third person to kill his own brother? How far is this morally tenable? And you have Rama responding in a very pragmatic way, like any military strategist, where he says, well, we can't be too particular about these things. That is their story. Right now, we need his help, and so we will take it. So this, again, I found very interesting, considering he's an avatara, but to have a very practical, pragmatic approach. I think that's the best part of Kamban's Rama. He's not somebody who's frozen either as a god or as a military hero. He is a mixture of all of this, and therefore for me, very human, very credible, and it's very difficult to resist this particular kind of Rama. Then I come to one more very interesting character for me. This is the character of Tara. So now Sugriva has been made king. He is in Kishkinda, he's having a good time. All that is the same as Valmiki. And then Rama gets angry, obviously, and sends Lakshmana. And Lakshmana goes. When Lakshmana goes, he's a Rudramurti. He's extremely angry. He's ready to vanquish the whole lot. And if you remember, in Valmiki, Sugriva sends Tara out for negotiation. And when she comes, the description is very interesting. Her girdle, her the belt of the ring belt she's wearing around her waist has slipped. Her pallu is not in its place. Her eyes are reddened. She's clearly tippled a bit. And she comes out to talk to Lakshmana. And Lakshmana is embarrassed by her state of, her disheveled state, by her déshabille. And he immediately lowers his eyes and talks to her, but not to her directly. This is the scene we see in a Valmiki. And actually, she's not embarrassed, he is. It's a very delicate moment. But when we take up the Ramayana, Tara is transformed into a pious widow because she's still in mourning. She's not married to Sugriva. She's not sharing a drink with him. She's a pious widow. And so she's standing there wearing a widow's garments. She is smeared vibhuti on her forehead. She's a picture of dignity and sorrow. And when Lakshmana sees her, he is reminded of his own mother Sumitra, who's probably now dressed like this because his father died too. And he looks upon Tara and he's overcome by emotion. And when he's overcome by emotion, he's not embarrassed to see her like in the case of a Valmiki. He's deeply moved. He remembers his own mother and the recent bereavement she has gone through in his absence. I now come to my last character that I would like to talk about. And if we have time, maybe two characters. Here I would like to talk about the character of Kumbhakarna. Kumbhakarna is the brother who is going to stay with Ravana in Valmiki as well as Kamban. But in Kamban, Kumbhakarna is the gentle giant. He's huge, but the waves of emotion that move him, how he's torn between the two brothers, how he's torn between Dharma and Adharma, are brought out beautifully. And his death is actually moksha, because he conveys to Vibhishana to tell Rama that what I'm doing because this is my brother and he is going to lose the war. So I have to stay with him. If everybody runs away from my older brother, who will remain with him? So even though he is performing a dharmic act, because he does plead with Vibhishana to Ravana to say, please return Sita, what you're doing is wrong. But when Ravana says, no, I will do it, Vibhishana walks out and Kumbhakarna stays. But Kamban has imagined a meeting between these two brothers who represent two paths of action. And you have the character of the gentle giant, Kumbhakarna, who tells Vibhishana that you must live. Our clan must continue through you. We must learn Dharma. We must come back to the path. So Vibhishana says, Rama will accept you too. Why don't you come back? And Kumbhakarna says, if all of us abandon our brother, he's going to lose. He can't be alone in defeat. Nobody sorry, there's an interruption. Nobody will stay with another knowing he's going to be defeated. Here you have the character of Kumbhakarna, who says, my love for Ravana is greater than my desire to choose even Dharma. So knowing it is Adharma, I will still stay with my brother. I will fight with him to the end. Please tell Rama that I should be granted moksha, because I am actually willing to follow the Sharanagati Tattva, but that would be too selfish. It will be just for me, and I cannot abandon my brother. So the figure of the gentle giant, who's Kumbhakarna, is somebody who's an invention of Kambana. And finally, I end with Kambana Ravana. Ravana, as imagined by Kamban, is a handsome, very well educated, highly refined musician. He plays the veena, and in fact, his flag has the veena on it. And so, you know, his city is a marvelous case of town planning. There are tall buildings, none of which is there in Ayodhya. So actually, Lanka is described as a much more modern, smart city, if you so like. And people are well attired, they speak well, they are refined. They just belong to another race, which is the Rakshasa race. And Ravana himself is a great Vedic scholar. He loves to play the veena. He's a worshipper of Mahadev. And he is, Kamban says that his feelings for Sita, he doesn't say so, but he hints that maybe his feelings for Sita border on the real. It is not just lust. He's deeply attracted to her. We have a scene in which he falls at her feet and rubs his head against the soil, and pieces of precious stone fall down. she's willing to not look at him. And I always find that it's very interesting to see how a topos then travels into another version of a poem by the same story. And so I will end with that. In the Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean, where you have a large Indian settlement back to the 19th century, since the times of the coolies, you have a modern poet called Karpana Marimuthu, who has written a poem, and it's called Sita's Lament. Sorry, it's called Ravana's Lament. And he has imagined Ravana standing on the tip of the island of the reunion and crying out for Sita, because Rama has won the war, she has gone away. And so he says, you left me who truly loved you for a man who lived without you for 12 years and who then is asked you to do the Agni Pravesha. You chose him over me, the man who loved you truly and who continues to love you forever. So you have the character of Ravana who's revisited. Interestingly, there is no Agni Pravesha and no Uttara Ramayana. Uttarakanda in Kamban. He ends it with the Pattabhishekam, which is performed obviously by Vasishtha and Vishwamitra. But who hands over the Gangajal to Bharata to hand over to Vishwamitra? It is the patron of Kamban, the man who supported him, who commissioned this work, who supported him, a poor poet, to write the Ramayana. So we see that Kamban's creation of the Ramayana is truly a transcreation. He has not just retold Rama's story. Rama's story is so beautiful that millions of people will retell the Ramayana. Today, any of us starts telling the Ramayana, immediately say, Hamare mein aisa bolte hain. So each one of us has really taken Rama on as their very personal property. So when this personal property comes into the hands of a great Tamil poet, a lover of language, a creator of beauty, a great bhakta, we have the case of the Kambarayana. I apologize for not providing quotations and making this a more scholarly lecture, but my circumstances unfortunately do not allow me to do so. But if there are any questions and I'm capable of answering them, I'm happy to do so. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Vidya ma'am. Is it okay if we take the question and answers after the next paper? Will you be able to stay with us?
I'm going back on my hospital duty. So I will try to log in. And if I can, I don't even know if there are questions, so I don't want to impose.
Yeah, because Eva madam also said it's urgent. Eva ma'am, have you joined? Is it okay if we take 2 or 3 questions for Vidya ma'am and then we start the paper?
Yes, of course. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I request if there are questions, we can take up few questions.
Madam, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to know, is there certain people or certain community in the southern India who worship Ravana as a hero, and vice versa, that is a Ram not a hero, but Ravana is a main the man who has a good qualities?
Sir, there is Periyar who has rewritten the Ramayana from the point of view of Ravana. That's a 19th century, 20th century creation. But to the best of my knowledge, which is very limited, I don't think there are any temples for Ravana in South India. There is, I understand the Jaina tradition has, how shall I call it, a niche for Ravana. But to the best of my knowledge, there is no such thing for Ravana in South India, but I'm happy to be corrected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for nice presentation. And I would like to know that Kumbhakarna in original Valmiki Ramayana, Kumbhakarna advised Ravana, isn't it? But in Kamba Ramayana, you are telling Kumbhakarna advises Vibhishana.
He advises, see, both of them stand up. Ravana and there is in Ravana's court, you have Vibhishana and Kumbhakarna, who advise Ravana against this, saying you cannot take another man's wife, return her, avoid the war. But what happens is in Kamban, while Vibhishana leaves and goes and joins Rama, Kamban has imagined a meeting with Vibhishana before the war and after Ravana has kicked him out, where he expresses the dilemma in which he finds himself, and he asks Vibhishana to tell Rama that he wants moksha, that he's not doing this. He should not be treated as a sinner. He should be treated with the same Sharanagati principle as Vibhishana, because he has to stay back and fight with his older brother, because his older brother is going to lose the war. And if everybody leaves him, he cannot be abandoned like this by everybody, including his brothers. So you go, you live, you practice Sharanagati Tattva, you become king after us. I will stay with our older brother, knowing he's wrong, knowing he's going to be defeated.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. You explained very knowledgeable and valuable your speech. Thank you. And you said that Kumbhakarna is very gentle man, and in Jain Ramayana is also gentleman, is Kumbhakarna, and he got liberation. He got liberation according to Jainism.